Good day! Now, welcome to Understanding the Self. At this point, ay pag-uusapan naman natin yung tungkol sa self, S-E-L-F. And that would be social, environmental, and other life factors. By the way, this lecture comes doon sa libro na Understanding the Self na sinulat ni Dr. Jonathan Macayan, ni Professor Jasmine Pinugu at saka ni Professor John Christopher Castillo. At the end of this discussion, you will be introduced dun sa journey of understanding the self, which would highlight the different factors, yung social, environmental, biological, and other life factors that contribute to the development of the self. And it is intended that at the end of this lecture, at least you'll be able to determine the different factors that contributes to one's being, evaluate the impact of the different factors of the self according to self-appraisal, and synthesize the influence of the different factors of self based on group assessment. Okay, so let's now get started. But to start with, let's have a diagnostics. Let's see how you view yourself. Just say if you agree or disagree with this statement. Number one statement, we can be whatever or whoever we want to be. Do you agree or disagree? Next statement, our tendencies are completely controllable. Agree or disagree? Number three, we are what we are right now because we want to be like this. Agree or disagree? Number four, there are still many things that we have not discovered about ourselves. Agree or disagree? And lastly, our parents or family members can only influence us while we are in the growing up years or formative years. Agree or disagree? So yung answer natin dito sa questions na ito, do sa agree or disagree, hopefully we'll be able to answer them as we go through the lessons that we will be discussing. Let's now talk about the self and identity. The self is one of the most interesting topics that people talk about every day. We may not be conscious about it, but every time we mention the term I, for example, I will go to school, or I love to hang out with my friends, or I like to eat burgers, or I like to jog. I. Unconsciously, pinag-uusapan natin yung ating self. Okay? Aside from that, we always mention also the term me. So, tell me about it. O kaya naman ay, it makes me feel awesome. Yan. So these are some of the things na unconsciously talks about the self, the identity. We can say na yung I is an actor and the me as the object. Our interest about self is even more evident in the functionality of this word variation of I and me. Kaya nga meron tayong term na I, me, mine, myself, di ba? Na madalas natin ginagamit sa everyday language natin. Our consciousness, the existence of the self, has been almost automatic. Or, pwede natin sabihin, ito ay reflexive. Okay? And we are almost unaware that in our everyday lives, we are constantly talking about I, me, and myself. And many scholars like theorists, scientists, and philosophers in different fields across generations have attempted to explain and thoroughly expound on several issues and controversies about the nature, existence, and dimensionality of the self. Ito palang understanding the self ay hindi lang manggagaling sa iisang disiplina. So we will not just talk about philosophical foundation. We will not just talk about scientific foundation or sociological foundation or psychological foundation. Or hindi natin pag-usapan lamang yung anthropological basis, but the combination of these disciplines as we understand the term self. Okay? Yan. So, ano ba ang similarities and difference ng self and identity? At ang self and identity ba ay uni or multidimensional? Unidimensional or multidimensional? Ano pa? Anong kinalaman ng nature versus nurture about the self? So let's talk about the nature versus nurture. Well, some insist that the self is predominantly a product of a natural process. Okay, so dahil nga doon sa napag-usapan natin before, yung tungkol sa heredity. No? Heredity, the transmission of traits from parents to offspring through genes. Kaya nga sabi ko, huwag kayong magtaka na kamukha niyo yung nanay o tatay ninyo. That's heredity. Magtaka kayo kapag kamukha niyo yung driver niyo. Okay? So, pag sinabi nating nature or yung biological science explains that our traits are passed on from one generation to another. Okay? Ito yung tinatawag nga na blueprint. Blueprint, no? Marinig natin sa mga engineers. Parang yan yung plano. Sa DNA natin, nandyan yung blueprint ng ating pagkatao. Okay? So it makes us predisposed to anything. Meron tayong mga specific tendencies na pwedeng namanan natin sa mga ninuno natin. Okay? So genetics contributed a lot about the description of the self. Okay? Kaya nga, itong nature natin or biological perspective of understanding the self, ang lagi nilang sinasabi yung similarities and differences of individuals. Okay? So while some insist that the self is predominantly a product of the natural process to which people are inherently predisposed, some argue that the self is largely influenced and principally constructed by one's social environment. Ang sinasabi, although yung inherited traits natin ay may malaking influence sa atin, malaki din ang contribution ng ating environment. If we're going to look into developmental psychology, meron tayong tinatawag na 4 na aspekto ng pagkatao. Ano-ano yon? So, meron tayong physical, meron tayong social, meron tayong environmental, at meron din naman tayong cognitive, yung mental aspect natin. So, ito mga to ang bumubuo dun sa individual. Okay? Social sciences argue that though the self should be primarily viewed as an outcome of various nurturing factors in the context of one's social life, social sciences have provided many insights and explanation about the self, both on the micro and macro level of one's social life. Okay? So different fields in social sciences stresses how group life, yung influence ng mga kinabibilangan nating grupo. Teka, napipili ba natin kung ano yung grupo na kabibilangan natin? Hindi. Pagkapanganak mo pa lang, may grupo ka na. Anong grupo mo? E di yung family mo. Diba? Yung experiences ng kapatid mo ay iba sa experiences mo. Halimbawa, ikaw ay panganay. Nung ipinanganak ka, wala ka ibang kapatid. Okay? Nung dumating yung pangalawa mong kapatid, nung pinanganak siya, meron na siyang kuya o ate. Magkaiba na kayo ng experience. In short, bawat isang individual ay lumalaki sa environment na magkakaiba. So now, let's try to reflect, no? As individual, ano ang stand mo sa issue na to? So this could be an activity, no, for the teachers out there. Pwede niyong ipagawa ito sa inyong mga students. Ano yon? Reflection. Anong reflection question natin? Di ba, sinasabi nga natin that ang personality, individual natin, ay influence ng nature or ng nurture. What if we complete this statement and form this into a paragraph? Kahit na 10 sentences paragraph lang. We are what we are right now because of. Then allow the students to answer this. We are what we are right now because of. That's one of the reflective activities na pwede nating ipagawa sa ating mga students. No? While arguments about the predominance of either nature or nurture are still unresolved. Ito yung tinatawag natin na nature versus nurture controversy. We could settle for an eclectic standpoint. An eclectic standpoint on this issue. Pwede natin sabihin na both nature and nurture contributed to the product of the self. Kaya ako ganito, may contribution yung aking genetics. May contribution din yung aking environment. And may contribution din yung perception ko sa environment. So that's how important understanding the self in terms of this nature versus nurture. And now let's go to self versus identity. Ano ba ang ibig sabihin natin ng identity? This is based on the lexical definition. Identity as a noun is referred to as the qualities, beliefs, etc. that make a particular person or group different from others. Ang identity, ito yung ipinagkaiba mo sa ibang mga tao. Okay? It distinguishes your character or personality from other individual or other person. While yung self naman, based on the lexical definition, the person that someone normally or truly is, or the entire being, the entire person of an individual. Okay? So, ano sa tingin nyo? What do you think are your similarities and differences with other people? Pwede nyo bang sagutin itong phrase na ito? Continue this phrase. I am mine. And then tuloy ninyo. Okay? If people would ask, kilala mo ba si ganito? At binanggit yung pangalan mo? Anong ine-expect mong masabi nilang characteristics mo? Or, ano ang hindi mo i-expect na sabihin nila? Halimbawa, diba? Kilala mo ba si ganito? Ay, oo, yung matangkad. Oh. Yung malakas kumain. Yan. Or, yung maganda. Yung mahabang buhok. Talks about personal characteristics. So, asking ourselves about the personal characteristic would help give us yung ating identity. Identities make up one's self-concept and variously described as what comes to mind when one think of oneself. Alam nyo, yung ating self-concept, binubuo yan ng 4 na bahagi. Meron tayong real self, self-image, looking glass self, and ideal self. Ano ito mga to? Yung real self, eto ka. Ito yung behavior mo kung walang nakakitang iba. Halimbawa, mag-isa ka lang sa kwarto. Kung anong kilos mo doon, real self mo doon. Ito yung meron naman tayong tinatawag na self-image. Ito naman ikaw kapag kaharap mo yung ibang mga tao. At meron din tayong looking glass self. Ito naman yung pananaw mo na tingin ng ibang tao tungkol sa'yo. At yung ideal self. Ano naman yung ideal self? Ito yung gusto mong maging. Itong 4 na aspekto na to, ito ang bumubuo sa ating self-concept. Okay? So, I hope kahit na bahagya ay nakapagbahagi kami ng konting kaalaman tungkol sa ating self, and I hope na sa mga susunod pa nating mga pagle-lecture ay makibahagi ulit tayo. Don't worry, sa mga susunod nating lecture, magbibigay tayo ng mga suggested activity, no? Para sa mga teachers, these are suggested activity na pwede nyong gawin doon sa mga estudyante ninyo na under ng subject na understanding the self. Okay? Thank you very much and I hope to see you again. Goodbye.